There might have been a bright light at the end of Phase 1, but it's clear that this battle was not over yet. There was still more to deal with. At a point in the past on the Rebellion de las Masas, when she was a bishop of the Church of the Deep, she noted that Fabi had aged much since the last time they met. Fabius noted that not aging was a characteristic of her subrace. She hadn't aged a day. She asked him what brought him to the Church of the Deep. He saw the Seaborns as indispensable in their preparation for their impending doom, seeing nothing else as capable of ensuring the survival of humanity, making it right for him to join hands with those who are able and willing to become Seaborn, to search for a way to prolong their existences. Mares understood that he's looking to use the knowledge of the wise and the talented as nourishment for Seaborns. She didn't see this as doing anything more than prolong their existences. Fabius asked if survival alone wasn't enough. He thought that a bishop of the Church of the Deep would share a majority of that belief with him. She told him that they both have faith in the Seaborns, but the word faith might mean something different for him than it does for her. She doesn't think that they should worship the Seaborns. They have to stand on equal ground with them, set their eyes on their natures. She asked them to please step aside. When they were back in the present, Dante sensed depression, sadness, sympathy, her emotions carried by bubbles. She saw Terra as a land in which the hatred for the different has entrenched itself. The city, a place in which people crushed by the trials of life have surrendered to its absurdities. She believed that both worlds needed Seaborns, perfected beneath the light. Faust saw that as her wish, but she doesn't see them as necessary for the city. Even in the city, there are people who are searching for a reason to live on, dreaming of a better world. Yes, Jasichun and Hubert being two of them. Although they're a rarity there. He knows... well... quite a few of them know that can't possibly be easy to change, but there has to be some kind of worth, value in that process alone. In the lives that they lead within the city. She asked, what could there be to a life of the unkind, which humanity is doomed to exist in, where all they ever do is hurt and hate one another? The doctor saw efficient order, natural altruism. They're both virtues that humanity could never, or rather should never, lose sight of. But there's no such thing as absolutes when it comes to the value of life. Survival is the right of all civilization, which means that it should never be up to others to define the worth of life, to argue for it. Mares asks, what if there was no other way? Then we get back to the past, where she was at Faro Muerto, asking if the Seaborn can understand what she's saying. She was living there for some time. She predicted that the Seaborn's evolution would have explosive progress, but that's been lost, and Fabius seems content just observing their slow development. She saw this as because they're directionless without a specific wish. She saw Seaborns as the key to changing Terra, the land, to stand against the incoming calamity. They need their survivability and adaptability. Humanity that turned exhaustion into ill intent, needed the Seaborn's blind, selfless altruism towards their own, where she never stopped her studies. Something small but sharp continued to stab at her frustrated heart, which was unable to be resolved. If they were to lose even that sense of self, and their creed assimilated into that stagnant great will, for the sake of survival, civilization had to be no more. For the sake of us, I had to be no more. The realization of that paradox made the first crack in her confidence that Seaborns were the answer to the problem that Iberia, the land and humanity, faced. The seeds of doubt were sown, but she'd already come too far to find to find a path more beautiful than the Seaborns. She didn't want to waste time with those stupid ruminations. She believed that there had to be a way, some kind of condition that the Seaborns needed to fulfill the, requirements to retain that sense of self, to retain their individual hopes and wishes. There is actually a case of this in that world, but it is rare. Her years were dedicated to that purpose, holding on to that precious hope, steeling her shaking heart. That was the easy part. There was no better solutions. She can't look away from the answer that lay right in front of her. All she needed to do was find a way for them to hope and wish, have each carry that sense of self. She repeated that like a mantra over and over again. Her drifting days came to an end when she found a new path, illuminated by a strange light across the sea. On that day, when that faint blue light shone, a whisper visited her. This was clearly Carmen's first contact with Mayers, who asked whose voice was this? She heard the answer, sought through the aeons by people that she didn't recognize, playing over and over again. Likely the 10,000 years within the facility during the Seed of Light project, when she was a brain and a nervous system in a tank. The voice was muffled, but it was warm and beautiful. Mayers heard about the light of the city, the hearts that were lost, the emotions that were forgotten, the sense of self that she didn't want to hear about anything anymore, except about the light that had sprouted from the 10 virtues. The 10 virtues likely being that of Buddhism. To be generous in mind, kind, and have a correct view of reality, to protect life, give generously and maintain discipline, to speak honestly, to reconcile when mistakes are made, to speak pleasantly and meaningfully. While in Christianity, this is wisdom, love, humility, patience, faith, hope, self-control, honesty, kindness, and gratitude. It could also be what that image, those words drew in her mind was clearer and more beautiful than ever. Mare saw both worlds as failing to find a way out of that bridle. If they're going to be satisfied with living on as they are, then Amia told her that she can't change what she saw by standing still. If she wanted to bring about a better world, then even if she might be lost in the ideals, she had to keep walking. Dante thought about this. Survival, worth of life. They've not been certain of these complicated ideas. They had no unflinching creed in which to convince her. The city had no need of the altruistic nature that Mayers wanted to bring there. Even with that, the emotions, the conversations that they found and collected over their journey, alongside the damned dozen, became their answer and they ticked on. Dante honestly didn't know the city either. Their memory only goes back a little over a year. Well, yes, a little more than a year, and For what that's practically their entire existence. They've been surrounded by those that they were traveling with. They wanted to keep trying. They couldn't deny that the city was an absurd and vicious place. Something new and horrible surprised them every other day, but they warned that the light she spoke of, they didn't think it would protect the sense of self. To do so, she had to look unflinchingly both ways, the path that lay ahead and the one she walked. Then she can confront them both. Mayers didn't see that as right. The light, it had to. He could have understood that she was working on what she heard about the city and the light. He asked, how can she be sure that it would protect the Seaborn's sense of self? Was this just what she wanted to believe? She saw that as a distinct possibility. Dante understood that even if the light can do what she hoped that it did, it wouldn't change anything. A convenient method like turning their nature's kind by transforming into Seaborns isn't their path. The sense of self projected like that, the kind nature attained by that would be hers, not theirs. She argued that protecting their own sense of self while being compassionate and kind, it's a path of unbearable suffering. Dante saw that they might fail some days despite their best efforts. Some days they'll be forced to confront the sins of their past and suffer. Don Quixote added that none of them, as they are now, can see where the path would lead to. But she can't leave it in the hands of hers without trying. Mayers asked if they're saying that Seaborns can be. The answer that she's always sought. Irene didn't see it as making much sense if she thought about it. And this is the religious zealot speaking. The Seaborn don't even know what self is. It's why sacrifice is what they do without hesitation, when they need to. If she was to introduce that sense of self to them, that selflessness that she wanted would be no more. Dante saw her as a Seaborn-shaped distortion who was not a Seaborn, and endlessly anguished, contemplating distortion. If her wish was to achieve an altruistic world, then her desire had to be that she doesn't want her efforts to become meaningless. Honglu considered that the Seaborns might be the perfect answer to some. It noted that Fabius was a recent example. Honglu didn't see that as Mayers. He told her to find a new answer. She couldn't comprehend this. To go back to wandering for so much time again, in search of a new answer. Honglu told her that she doesn't have to walk it alone. She could rely on others, and it wouldn't feel as long. Mayers had nothing to respond to that. Honglu told her that trying to carry such a heavy burden all by herself, it was such a prideful thing to do. At the start of Phase 2 of this battle, the resistance to status ailments and protection will no longer be there. Abyssal vitality will still be a concern. She also has a shield equal to the amount of HP lost, and gains the Indelible Compassion passive, where it means that she'll be staggered when the shield runs out, and gains 5 Fragile in the process. She'll apply 5 Nervous Impairment, all with less than 15. And when she has the Never See brand, she gains Final Power and Coin Power by 3 each. A Nervous Impairment inflicted will be doubled. She'll also be more aggressive. She consumes Abyssal Vitality to deal more Clash Power for every 10 Nervous Impairment, up to 2. Some of her attacks will also have Unbreakable Coins, so either the healing EGO needs to be maintained, or you'd better have those that can dodge well. One of her attacks gives Offense level up, but this doesn't apply if the Clash loses. When she uses her strongest attack, which increases in power based on nervous impairments, it'd be like it was in Phase 1, but it also gains shield equal to 20% of her maximum HP. But before that, one turn after Phase 2 starts, an event occurs. Tides carry away the windows to Mare's past, soon devouring them beyond vision. It's almost as if Mare's in the Dungeon of the Fathoms. No, the ocean itself are fusing into one. Val said, a majority of distortions encountered by the bus team have assumed a form generally recognized as an organic entity. However, there is nothing preventing a distortion's form from breaking that boundary and taking a different shape, as it may vary by the individual's desires. If her distortion is allowed to exacerbate undeterred, it may eventually corrode that very space in which they stand. As they were taking some time to catch their breaths, a few small machines tumbled to the ground, shot from one of the trembling fathoms. It must be one of those mysterious machines in Mare's home that they saw when they peered into her memories. The machines continued to whir loudly as though the waves broke them. They saw that there were various apparatus attached to the sockets on their sides. Yi-Sang said, expensive they appear, yet how numerous they are. Gregor said, well, maybe she's similar to one of those fixer fellows who is always hell-bent on picking up every new cutting-edge workshop tech. Ishmael said, it says, little handy down there. Honglu said, this has an oddly similar structure to the Hand of the Saint the Inquisitor brought. Well, that's because the Hand of the Saint is loosely based on Little Handy. They appropriated Aegir tech, which makes their persecution of them rather hypocritical. Honglu said, Don Quixote said, this shall be fantastically wonderful machine. Be of help to us in the battle. Rhodes Island always seems to have their hands full, holding the line against the tide of sea terrors. They should probably take just one and leave the rest to help them out. After a quick discussion with the others, they decided to take just one of the machines. If the wilderness survival module is taken, a voice in the device says, wilderness survival module detected, activating survival command. Dante didn't really understand how it worked, but it sure sounded helpful. This would grant the Little Handy Wilderness Survival Module, which would boost maximum HP by 20% and would boost heals by 40%. If the Housekeeping Assistant module was taken, it would say, Housekeeping Assistant module detected, converting the Hand of the Saint to patrol mode. Dante didn't really understand how it worked, but it sure sounded helpful, and this would grant the Little Handy Housekeeping Assistant module, which would actively grant the Hand of the Saints buffs. Or to be more precisely, it would result in everyone gaining offense level and defense level up to 4 times each time the Hand of the Saint is used. If the incremental motion firmware was selected, the voice would say, incremental motion firmware detected, activating blockade command. Yeah, Dante didn't really understand how this works either, but It sure sounded helpful. And the little handy incremental motion firmware would be gained, which would remove one of the stagger thresholds from all, and when staggered, recovery would be immediately once per combatant. If the mini decontamination kit was selected, it would say, "Mini decontamination kit detected, counteracting NetMoverSitan brand toxicity." Dante saw this as helpful, even though it wasn't understood easily, and the little handy mini decontamination kit was gained, which would nullify the NetMoverSitan brand's effects. So that's regarding nervous impairment and the fixed damage to allies. If the external upgrade module was detected, it would say, "External upgrade module detected, activating attack command." And this would gain the little handy external upgrade module, where for 3 turns after gaining that, 2 power up and 2 damage up would be granted. And this would also be applied to those substituting in, from the moment that they substitute in. After defeating Mayors, and it was a tough battle. Not as tough as Jack Hugh, but still pretty tough. They still prevailed. Honglu agreed that it's true that people look for differences in others, to find something to hate, but it's also true that those differences people can look up to. The doctor added that admiration usually goes hand in hand with overestimation. Honglu can see that Mayors admires the 2 unknowns, Seaborns and the light. She thought that they'd be the solution to everything. Dante addressed Mayors, asking if she still wanted to go to the city. She said no. She then reverted to an Aegir. She wanted to return to Terra to broaden her studies. And she'll talk more, to find a new path forward to realize her wish. Amia told her that, well, what would happen now? They're going to need to have a long talk with the Inquisition, but they'll help her too in her search for that path, if they can. Then the great arc built from the city crumbled. Light faded and gave way to shadows. They then found themselves back aboard the vessel. Amia saw that the battle was complete. The vessel was slowing down. She then asked how Mayors was. Yisang told her that she was unconscious due to the mental strain, which shows that this was a fight inside her mind, where if defeated, she would still be alive but out cold. Makes you question what would happen if she was killed in the Fathoms. Would she die in reality? Dante understood that it all happened inside the Dungeon of the Fathoms. It couldn't have been easy on her mind to send so many waves after them. Sinclair asked what will happen to Mayors now. The doctor told him that they need to wait for the Inquisition's ruling, then bring her to Rhodes Island. They saw that her efforts were, well, misguided. But she has Terra's interests at heart. Together, they're sure that they can discuss the best way forward. I can see why they'd make that offer. She'd get more resources to work with, and as a bonus, she'll be in a work environment that's more accepting of her. Then Irene brought up a less than favourable conclusion. What if she's sentenced to death? The doctor couldn't answer that, but Dr. Calcit could. She said that they need to offer a different proposal, telling the doctor that they can consider it when they get to it. Dante saw that it was finally over. All they have left to do is to go back to their world. As they were preparing to leave with their hearts much lighter than they were earlier, Amia alerted them to something that was rapidly approaching them. A low, thrumming roar vibrated in the air as a strange shadow loomed over the ship. Irene asked where that shade came from. Ishmael struggled to comprehend this, asking if that... This caused Ishmael to take the radio from Gregor and run to the control room. Urtis was not far behind her. As she followed her, Dante understood that if those two were running to the bridge, they then told everyone to brace, grab onto something. Heathcliff complained by saying, "Oh," mucking it up right before the finish line. Amia translated what Dante said to the doctor. The doctor, understanding that they're trying to turn the ship around, they ordered the operators to brace for impact, to stay alert. Something was coming. The ship leaned forward heavily as it hurriedly turned port side, and they caught a glimpse of a massive shadow gliding just beneath the water's surface, right where the ship was a second ago. It was a whale-shaped seabourn that was slightly larger than the vessel. Amia's communicator buzzed with Ishmael's voice. She could see that the currents were going wild. Something was causing this. Urtis told them that they'll try to maintain evasive maneuvers for as long as possible, but they can't do this forever. If the situation doesn't improve, they might have to take the vessel across the dimensional door, asking if Rhodes Island has a way out of this. The doctor said, not yet, but they have to come up with one, and fast. Ishmael asked if Dante had anything in mind. Dante told them that they have to figure out why the seabourn was coming after them. Ishmael understood. They'll focus on steering that ship, telling them to keep them posted. Another sharp turn resulted in narrowly avoiding the seabourn as it swam by. Dante knew that they couldn't just take the whole ship through the dimensional door. Yes. As if they did that, as in take the whole ship through the dimensional door, they'd not be the only ones on it. The sea was too wild to simply turn around and let the others leave. Dr. Calcin suspected that as, well, it's as if it's almost obsessed with that ship. Dante asked why it could possibly be coming after that ship, suspecting that it was Fabius's order before he died. Skadi then appeared, saying that it's coming after her, as she's practically a seaborne magnet. The doctor was surprised by this. Skadi told them that she's their enemy, an abyssal hunter. Dante saw that this was proven by the seabourn charging against the bow of the ship, the moment Skadi repositioned herself there. Rodia asked what abyssal hunters were and why they were trying to kill her. Dr. Calcit explained that they hunt sea terrors and seaborn. It's not based on any emotion, such as vengeance or resentment. It's Skadi's... She was about to explain that she's basically a prison for their god and they want to break out of. But she saw that as unimportant. They're solely, targeting Skadi. Faust made it clear that the operators of Rhodes Island are heavily fatigued at that moment. Yes, fatigued at that moment from their long defense against the waves in the Dungeon of Fathoms. The same could be said about Limbus Company and Amia, who battles Mayas there. To engage the seabourn there now is... Then something shook their vessel. Heathcliff complained, "Oh, what now?" Masson noticed multiple entities surrounding them. However, a violent, destructive sound crashed through the waves towards that vessel, past the wall of mist, there was... Dr. Calcit saw this as fortunate, thinking this might be how it was supposed to go. Faust didn't see it as worth responding to. It was the last night speaking of Ishhamala. Ah yes, the Seaborn's god. Don Quixote saw that the knight was heading their way. To Irene, this was getting worse. 2 Seaborns. Honglu didn't see this as a problem. It's the same knight that they fought earlier. He doubted that he'll be able to stop himself from charging at the giant sea monster. Dante saw that he was right. The knight focused on the whale Seaborn, not concerned with anything else. The doctor understood that they can help the knight repel that Seaborn. They might just have a chance of sending Limbus Company back through the dimensional door and escaping aboard that vessel themselves, asking if everyone can still move. Irene could, but she's almost at her limits. The doctor had a plan. They'd like everyone to trust them on this. Skadi told them that things weren't so bad outside. After they entered the portal, it was time for the hunter to get back to work. Dante saw Irene's lamp shining a bright ray of light from atop the deck, while Skadi leapt into the air using the ship's bow as a launching pad. The doctor was briefly silent, observing this as the operators each scattered to their positions as commanded by them. Ishmael and Urutis was with them as well, likely finding someone else to steer the ship. Yes, likely Dr. Calcit. Rodia asked if it was okay for those 2 to be there. Urutis replied by saying that Dr. Calcit was taken over. Rather, has taken over with the steering of the ship. This crisis was far from over, but she was good enough. So it was reasonable for them to leave it to her and descend to the decks to return to their world. Amir didn't think they'd all be able to bid them goodbye. Ishmael asked if she was sure that they're going to be okay. They can stay a little longer and help. Amir appreciated this sentiment, but she brought their attention to the dimensional door, which had shrank significantly smaller since the first time they saw it. She told them that they don't have much time. Dante wondered if it was only supposed to open for a set period of time, or if it's closing now because their work there was done. Not much can be learned about it, but it was clear that their time there was coming to an end. Dante thanked Amir. They would have been lost for a while in that world if it weren't for Rhodes Island's help. Amir saw it as thanks to Limbus Company that he should be able to study the dimensional door before they return. Gregor saw this as time to say goodbye to the Iberian breeze. Irene was annoyed by this, due to the big pile of paperwork that awaited the Inquisition, telling them to try not to drop into Iberia next time. Yeah, red tape follows you everywhere, doesn't it? Irene was going to have a lot of that when she gets back, definitely. Ishmael telling her that they'll try to stay in their own worlds, as the whale Seaborn briefly faltered at the combined might of Skadi and the last night. The ship's bow managed to stop right up to the dimensional door. The doctor telling Dante that it was their time to get to the dimensional door. Amir hopes that they'll someday meet again, waving them off as she and the other operators had their attention focused on the huge threat in front of them. Yisang told them that they'll take their leave. Dante told them to return to the city. The sea turned into a brutal battlefield. Tearing roars contending with one another. After taking one final look at Rhodes Island defending the vessel, They leaped into the pitch-black darkness at the center of the dimensional door. Back to the living hell that they're actually familiar with. They were swept away by the tides of consciousness. The river drew out their memories and consciousness, subliming them away. Then, Dante woke up disoriented, asking if they were at Yihongguan. They looked around and the others were strewn across the room, sleeping, while Heathcliff crashed out like that. Dante asked, how did the others do that at the same time, sleeping against the walls? Dante felt that something was off. Then Zeren saw that Dante was conscious. She requested that they continue their rest in their chamber, then making it more difficult to clear the areas where their bodies were. Dante said that they just came through the dimensional door after Rhodes Island. Then they weren't sure of what they were remembering. Zeren told them that they were moved there after the After Team discovered their unconscious bodies at the entrance of Lobotomy Corporation branch in Hongguan. Dante felt like they just went through a memorable experience, but they couldn't recall what. There was a huge gap in their memory, and that's strange emotional tug at their hearts, and each ear that they didn't recall extracting. Don Quixote was still asleep, speaking of Rocinante, telling him to give her 5 minutes more. Zeren, not understanding the context, nor did she care, scheduled the training dummies to wake them in 5 minutes. The bizarre sensation naturally settled, asking what was the abnormality, what just happened. Dante could answer neither of those questions. Dante asked where Saud was. She said something about a delay. They are still in Hongguan, going nowhere. Saud was giving them odd jobs while they were there. Something to do while they wait for however they get back to Mephistopheles. On the desk, they found a note filled with various requests and a letter. Both were left by Saud. Saud told them that they had a distortion contract. They have to earn their keep. They're not going to rest there until they got the message from HQ. Dante asked if they're allergic to giving them time off. At that point, a voice briefly surfaced from the abyss of their memories before sinking again. The doctor said that there's no such things as absolutes when it comes to the value of life, which means that it should never be up to others to define the worth of life, to argue for it. Dante pondered this briefly, not remembering who said that or where this was said, not even understanding what that means. They also remember what Amia said, that they can't change what they see by standing still. If you want to bring about a better world, then even if you get lost in the details, you have to keep walking. Some of those words left a lingering impression. They then got up from their seat and began waking up the others one by one, saying it's not like they're getting anything done there, telling the others to get on their feet, time to get to work. When each woke up, they were each disoriented, like they all woke up from a long dream. What caused the memories of their journey to Terra, the world of Arknights, to at least be suppressed? Was it Carmen? No, if it was her, it's not to cover her tracks because they're onto her, as Heathcliff was already aware of her in some form. They've been able to tell that they're corrupted by someone, based on one side of the conversation of certain individuals, such as Dongrang, Heathcliff, Jamu, Mears. Even before any of those, Virgilius heard her and would have been able to relate to Heathcliff, telling him and the others that he basically told Carmen, as we know her as, to go herself. and then he manifested the EGO. Okay, that was oversimplifying it, but that's more or less how it went. The same applies to Zhao, the former head of Lu Association South Section 1. So, yeah, let's safely eliminate that. It's more likely whatever abnormality brought them there that caused that. It's possible that it might not be the blue star or any of the aberrations that has appeared so far. It's not clear why the memory was removed, but from a narrative reason. It might be so that they don't need to worry about the rights to the Arknights universe. They don't need to refer to that after this part of the story. Yet evidence of these events remain. EGO that Dante doesn't remember extracting, involving non-abnormalities, involving people that they can't remember, along with a report on mayors, written by Yi Sang. Let's see, the tidal energy being the EGO from the Abyssal Hunter, the Aegir Seaborn hybrid, made to fight the Seaborn known as Skadi. This one does sinking and tremor and causes more damage based on gloom resistance and resonance. She also does more damage against single targets and hits harder, so good for one big target, much like Skadi's role in Arknights, one-on-one against targets that need destroying. There's Unbrilliant Glory from the Karanta former knight from Cameras, known as Milnar. He's based on the source's attack power, building, while not attacking, but can't attack or block, and the corroded form of this EGO is similar to, well, at least in appearance, to the famous Polish cavalry formation, the Winged Hussars, that saved Vienna from the Ottoman Turks. The band Sabaton even made a song about them. There's Command Meltdown from the synthetic based on the cat people Victoria known as Dr. Calcit. That can attack up to 3 people, and is more powerful if burn or ruptures on the target and deals up to 25% more damage. Depending on the potency and count of rupture, there's also a healing ability to those that need it, along with SP for 2 allies, with a hardened shell barrier that provides defense level up and protection. Her healing herself and 1 ally is much like she prioritizes healing herself and monster in Arknights. The last EGO is to remain oneself from Ling, who is a summoner from an unknown race from Yan, which is a country mostly populated by the Lung, dragon people. Ling has dream power, allowing for reality warping. This is because she is one of 12 fragments of Sui, a Furamut. They're described as gods by the Sargonians. They're immune to originium arts and oropathy, and are biologically immortal, but can be broken into fragments. Thing is one such fragment. This EGO grants poise that can cause more damage and more critical damage if the Thunderer or higher Thunderer status is gained. There is also a little sinking inflicted on the enemy, which can also increase how many it hits. Thunderer and higher Thunderer also grants offense and defense level up increase. This is based on her mechanic to summon minions and combine them. Okay, last time something like this happened, it involved Encore at Wuthering Heights, involving the basement of it, where former Ring researchers and Linton did an experiment that summoned a bad-end version of Heathcliff, who sought to kill all of his variants and those that made his life hell in his own world. But in this case, this is where Dante and the Damned Dozen found themselves in a parallel world. Could something like this happen again? Either someone from a parallel world or them going to that parallel world? Yeah. Perhaps struggling to survive an Adam's ending in Lobotomy Corporation, or have a near miss with the black stain in his bad ending. Okay, those are two extreme examples. It might even be a world where the old G-Corp never collapsed, and they're seen as competition for R-Corp's clone army. Okay, whatever happens, this will be after Chapter 9, with a certain Blood Knight artist that's surprisingly good with children. Speaking of which, where is Mephistopheles? As for Mayors, it's possible that, after a lengthy interrogation from Irene and a possible deal with Rhodes Island, she'll be working for Rhodes Island on finding the solution that she seeks, with those that aren't a bunch of xenophobic bigots. And so she won't experience persecution. At least when she's not in Iberia. Well, Irene will be able to bring the ship from the Iberian Golden Age, known as Rebelión de las Masas, so no need to burn that one. Well, or whatever execution method they have in Iberia. This is largely because diplomacy seems to be more successful in that world. As for the operators that was with the Doctor besides Amir, Dr. Calcit and Skadi, I was unable to identify them. They might be operators that are on file, or they might just be added there to make it seem more dramatic before the Damned Dozen left. The first time that this universe was seen by Dante was when their head malfunctioned and it blended with their perception of their universe, where Virgilius was a stand-in for Amir, and since the Damned Dozen had found themselves in another universe once, it's entirely possible that it could happen again. Now, this might not be the case, but if this is the blue star that they encountered, and it broke out of the Lobotomy Corporation HQ, or even the library, during the second release of Lights, yes, if it was released during the library instance, then it's possible that those drawn into it weren't killed. They just found themselves in another universe. Seriously, it's an isekai abnormality? Well, it's similar to what the Zeeli did in a universe made by Stephen Baxter. But in their case, it was on purpose to escape from a foe that they couldn't defeat, which were basically dark matter birds. Dark matter space birds, to be more precise. And in that case, it wasn't an abnormality that was a giant compared to humans. It was what was either known as the Zeeli Ring or Baldur's Ring, which was made up of thousands of galaxies in a ring that created a way to another universe to escape from that threat that they couldn't defeat. Now, whatever it is, it's dangerous, as there's no knowing where they'd end up once sucked into it. Only that the immediate transition wouldn't be lethal. It'll be anything that's hostile that they meet on the other side that would be lethal. Encore also has a means of bringing others to the Project Moon universe, at least the one we're following, although it requires a sacrifice of flesh to take up the identity. Either they didn't think of cloning, didn't have time to make one, or they just didn't care. Regardless, what's to stop them from doing this again? Time will tell when the next crossing between parallel worlds happens, but the dangers of the Project Moon universe will still be present, even if it doesn't happen again. Oh yes, before we finish this is also a memory wipe that affected even Dante, although not completely. Something that even K-Corp fails to. Okay, next it's abnormalities and distortions, and after that, identities. Until next time, hail the rabbit!